There's a pattern that repeats across wars, disasters, and expeditions so consistently that it's almost uncomfortable to talk about. The more gear people rely on, the faster they fail when conditions turn hostile. History doesn't just suggest this, it documents it relentlessly. From trench warfare to jungle campaigns to modern disaster zones, survival has never belonged to the best equipped. It has belonged to the best adapted. This isn't an argument against equipment. Armies, explorers, and civilians have always used tools. The problem is the modern belief that gear replaces skill, judgment, and adaptation. History shows the opposite. When stress hits, gear is the first thing to break, get lost, freeze, clog, tear, or become unusable. Skills, once learned, remain functional under conditions where equipment simply cannot. One of the clearest examples comes from World War II cold weather campaigns. Entire units were issued advanced clothing, tents, and heating systems by the standards of the time. Yet cold injuries remained devastatingly high. The issue wasn't a lack of equipment, it was misuse. Soldiers overdressed, sweated, and froze once stationary, boots filled with moisture. Sleeping systems failed because troops slept directly on frozen ground. The gear worked on paper, but without discipline and knowledge, it became a liability. Jungle warfare tells the same story from the opposite climate. In the Pacific, soldiers carried gear designed for temperate environments that rotted, rusted, and molded within weeks. Knives corroded, boots disintegrated, and rations spoiled. The troops who survived best weren't those with the most equipment, but those who learned how to dry clothing properly, rotate footwear, improvise shelters, and maintain tools with minimal resources. Gear degraded, skills adapted. Even navigation history exposes the myth. Armies have, time and again, entered combat zones with advanced navigation tools only to lose them under fire in bad weather or just plain chaos. Back in World War II, soldiers learned terrain association, dead reckoning, and map modification techniques precisely because compasses broke, stars vanished behind clouds, and lights could give away their positions. When, modern survival culture treats GPS as essential rather than supplemental, it's just repeating a mistake that history already corrected. Fire-starting obsession is, honestly, another example. Loads of survival kits are built around redundant fire tools, ferro rods, lighters, accelerants. Yet, if you look at historical survival manuals, they rarely treated fire as the main solution. Fire was valuable, sure, but shelter placement, wind control, insulation, and metabolic heat mattered more. Soldiers who relied on fires alone ended up freezing when fuel was unavailable, wet, or just tactically unsafe. But those who really understood heat retention managed to survive without flames at all. Weapons and defensive gear, well, they follow the same pattern. Historical records show soldiers abandoning issued equipment in favor of simpler, personal tools that actually matched their environment and skills. Not because the issued gear was bad, but because complexity just fails under stress. Complicated systems demand ideal conditions, and let's face it, simplicity tolerates chaos. Modern emergency scenarios prove this hasn't changed. Hurricanes, wildfires, and grid failures consistently strand people surrounded by equipment they don't know how to use properly. Generators fail for lack of fuel management. Water filters clog because users never practiced pre-filtration. Medical kits go unused because no one trained with them under pressure. The failure isn't the gear. It's the assumption that possession equals preparedness. Historically, the most reliable survival systems were behavioral, not material. Layering clothing properly, rotating rest and movement, conserving calories, reading weather shifts, managing moisture, choosing terrain intelligently. These skills required no resupply and scaled to any environment. Gear supplemented them, but never replaced them. Another overlooked factor is cognitive load. In real emergencies, stress degrades fine motor skills and decision-making. Gear that requires precision, assembly, or complex steps often becomes unusable. History favored tools and techniques that worked when hands were numb, visibility was poor, and time was short. If a system couldn't function under those conditions, it didn't survive doctrinal review, whether officially or through brutal field experience. This is why stockpiles failed repeatedly in war zones. Soldiers didn't run out of gear. They ran out of time, energy, and clarity. Units that trained adaptability survived supply disruptions that destroyed better-equipped forces. The lesson is, well, uncomfortable because it challenges consumer-driven preparedness culture, but history is unambiguous. The most dangerous belief isn't being under-equipped, it's being, well, overconfident in equipment. Gear creates a false sense of security that really delays learning and practice. And when it fails, the psychological crash is often more lethal than the physical conditions. The historical record doesn't argue for abandoning gear. It argues for, demoting it. Tools should extend skills, not replace them. The moment gear becomes the plan rather than a supplement, failure becomes inevitable. Every generation relearns this lesson under pressure. The smarter move is to learn it from history instead. If this kind of grounded, no-nonsense historical insight matters to you, subscribe to the channel and share this with someone who still believes survival can be bought off a shelf. Strange,